Showtime. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Inmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane. Trinadapi Sunichena Torod Iva Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Namai Vikivalam. Kalo Nastyeva, 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 Gatir Anyata. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Sri Vas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Blessings on all of you today appearing. Those of you who have not turned on your screen, please show your face so that I don't think I'm speaking to some black impersonal wall. So everyone, please turn on your camera. I'd like to specifically bless today's sponsor, the Rati family, and it looks like granddaughter is there. Is that correct? Very good. Last week, we had a program, a summary study of the Rasa Leela. So tonight is part 2. We're going to go a little more in depth in one of the sections of the Rasa Leela to extract some very confidential understandings of the process of Bhakti Yoga. So first I will read a quick, very short summary of what we did last week, and then we'll go to the chapter. If everyone could repeat at home, Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Lord Sri Krishna, intending to enjoy the rasa dance, engaged in arguments and counter-arguments with the Gopis. And when the Gopis became proud of being the most fortunate women in the universe, Krishna displayed his pastime of renunciation by disappearing from the midst of the Gopis. And Krishna also disappeared from Sri Radhaji when even she became somewhat proud. The Gopis became tormented through the long night of separation from Krishna, and they wandered like mad women from forest to forest in search of Krishna. The Gopis, overwhelmed by feelings of separation from Krishna, sat down on the bank of the Yamuna and began praying for Krishna's audience, and they also began to sing Krishna's glories. Sri Krishna then manifested himself in the midst of the Gopis, who had become extremely disturbed by their separation from Krishna. Later, Krishna consoled the Gopis, and they expressed to him their deep feelings of ecstasy. Then, Lord Sri Krishna resumed the rasa dance, and Krishna enjoyed with his beloved girlfriends in the forest along the Yamuna River. So if you have any message or anything you want to tell me, put it in the chat box and I will make a note of it. So the section that we're going to go in depth tonight is when Krishna returns to the Gopis. We just heard how Krishna left even Radharani because the Gopis and Radha became a little proud. And then we also heard last week, we went through all of the prayers of the Gopi Gita, 19 prayers. So after that Gopi Gita, Krishna returned. So that's the section that we're going to hear tonight. And then we will sing the Damodarashtakam prayers and the translation. I pray that the blessings of Lord Krishna be upon all of you and all of your extended family members. This is from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Shukadeva Goswami said, O King Parikshit, having thus sung and spoken their hearts out in various charming ways, the Gopis began to weep loudly. They were very eager to see Lord Krishna. Then Lord Krishna, with a smile on his lotus face, appeared before the Gopis. Wearing a garland and a yellow garment, Krishna directly appeared as Madana Mohan, one who can bewilder the mind of Cupid, who himself bewilders the minds of ordinary people. And when the Gopis saw that their dearmost Krishna had returned to them, they all stood up at once, and out of affection for Krishna, their eyes bloomed wide. It was as if the air of life had re-entered the bodies of the Gopis. So that's the picture on the screen behind me. Krishna has returned and the gopis have stood up. One gopi joyfully took Krishna's hand between her folded palms, and another gopi placed Krishna's arm, which was anointed with sandalwood paste, on her shoulder. Another slender gopi respectfully took in her joined palms the betel nut Krishna had chewed, and another gopi, burning with desire, put Krishna's lotus feet on her breast. One gopi, beside herself with loving anger, bit her lips and stared at Krishna with frowning eyebrows, as if to wound Krishna with her harsh glances. Another gopi looked with unblinking eyes upon Krishna's lotus face. But even after deeply relishing Krishna's sweetness, she did not feel satiated, just as mystic saints are never satiated when meditating upon Krishna's lotus feet. One gopi took Krishna through the aperture of her eyes and placed Krishna within her heart. Then, with eyes closed and bodily hair standing on end, that gopi continuously embraced Krishna from within. Thus immersed in transcendental ecstasy, she resembled a yogi meditating upon Paramatma. So this is why Lord Chaitanya instructs that the gopis are the greatest yogis. Here is the reference. She took Krishna within her heart and she was embracing him in transcendental ecstasy. In other words, there is no material check. Nothing can stop or impede your loving service to Krishna. Nothing. We heard in the previous session how some gopis were physically stopped from entering the rasa dance by their fathers or brothers or husbands. They were physically stopped. What did they do? They gave up that body and in spiritual body entered the rasa dance. Nothing can check love of Krishna. Let's resume. All the gopis enjoyed the greatest festivity when they saw their beloved Keshava once again. Here, Keshava, the connotation, Keshava who has very fine black hair. Very fine, Keshava. The gopis gave up their distress of separation, just as people in general forget their misery when they gain the association of a spiritually enlightened person. Encircled by the gopis, who were now relieved of all distress, Lord Achyuta. Now, why does Shukadev use that name, Achyuta? Infallible. Especially with his devotees, Krishna never fails. He left, but because the gopis are the topmost devotees, he has to return, and we'll hear about that. Lord Achyuta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, shone forth splendidly. My dear King Parikshit, Krishna thus appeared like the Supersoul, encircled by his spiritual potencies. The Almighty Krishna then took the gopis with him to the bank of the Kalindi, who, with her hands of her waves, had scattered piles of soft sand upon the shore. So in Vrindavan, everyone and everything is serving Krishna. Here you see the river Yamuna, Kalindi. She wants to render service, so she piles up this soft sand. In that auspicious place, the breeze, bearing the fragrance of blooming kunda and mandara flowers attracted many bees, and the abundant rays of the autumn moon dispelled the darkness of night. And even these bees are great devotees. These are not ordinary bees. Since they are appearing at this night of the Rasa dance, even those bees are exalted saints and sages, taking that form. Because their heartache vanquished by the ecstasy of seeing Krishna, the Gopees, like the personified Vedas before them, who had seen Krishna during his appearance in the previous day of Lord Brahma, felt their desires completely fulfilled. And for their dear friend Krishna, the Gopees arranged a seat with their shawls, which were smeared with kumkum powder. Lord Krishna, for whom the great masters of mystic meditation arrange a seat within their hearts, he took his seat in the assembly of the Gopees. Krishna's transcendental body, which is the exclusive abode of beauty and opulence within the three worlds, shone brightly as the Gopees worshipped him. Sri Krishna had awakened romantic desires within the Gopees, and they honored Krishna by glancing at him with playful smiles, gesturing amorously with their eyebrows, and massaging Krishna's hands and feet as the Gopees held them in their laps. And even while worshipping Krishna, however, the Gopees felt somewhat angry, and thus they addressed Krishna as follows. O Krishna, some people reciprocate the affection only of those who are affectionate towards them, while others show affection even to those who are indifferent or inimical. And yet others will not show affection towards anyone. So, dear Krishna, please properly explain this matter to us. So here's what Krishna says. My dear Gopis, so-called friends who show affection for each other only to benefit themselves are actually selfish. They have no true friendship, nor are they following the true principles of religion. Indeed, if they did not expect benefit for themselves, they would not reciprocate at all. Krishna continued, some people are genuinely merciful, or like parents, naturally affectionate. Such persons who devotedly serve even those who fail to reciprocate with them are following the true faultless path of religion, and they are known as true well-wishers. But then, there are those three kinds of individuals who are either spiritually self-satisfied, materially fulfilled, or by nature ungrateful, or simply envious of superiors. Such persons will not love even those who love them, what to speak of those who are inimical. Oh, my dear Gopis, the reason I do not immediately reciprocate the affections of living beings, even when they worship me, is that I want to intensify their loving devotion. They then become like a poor man who has gained some wealth and thus loses it, and who thus becomes so anxious about it that he can think of nothing else. So this statement by Krishna is very, very significant. I must point out, what Krishna is saying here is for those who are somewhat advanced, not for ordinary persons. It's for those who are somewhat advanced in their devotional service to Krishna. Krishna continues, "My dear Gopis, understanding that simply for my sake you rejected the authority of worldly opinion, you rejected the Vedas, you rejected your relatives, I acted as I did only to increase your attachment to me. For even when I removed myself from your sight, by suddenly disappearing, I never stopped loving you. Therefore, my beloved Gopis, please do not harbor any bad feelings towards me, your beloved. You should..." Now here comes the verse that is, again, besides that other verse I just pointed out, this one is the main verse of this chapter. It's a very famous verse. "You should understand that I am not able to repay my debt to you for your spotless service, even within a lifetime of Lord Brahma. Your connection with me is beyond reproach. You have worshipped me, cutting off all domestic ties, which are difficult to break. Therefore, please let your own glorious deeds be your compensation." And that's how that chapter ends, and then the rasa dance resumes. So as I pointed out last week, needs to be pointed out again. In general, Krishna reciprocates, as he says in Bhagavad Gita, "As you surrender unto me, I reward you accordingly." But that other verse I pointed out, as I said, that's for devotees or beyond that neophyte stage. For devotees in general, that Bhagavad Gita verse, "As you surrender, I reciprocate," that's the general rule. But for more advanced devotees, that other verse where Krishna says, "Sometimes I do not reciprocate," and he explained why. Because then you'll become more attached to me. So here, in the case of the Gopis, that Bhagavad Gita verse does not exist. Because he's admitting right here, I can't repay you for your service. He says, I am forever in your debt. Imagine, God is in your debt. 99.99%, everybody's in God's debt. We need God for everything. Give me this, give me that, protect me, bless me, please, 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 please. But in the case of the Gopis, he's in their debt. So, this last verse that we just studied, how Krishna cannot repay the debt of the Gopis, is explained by Krishna Das Kaviraj in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So I pulled that out so that we can go deeper. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Krishna Das Kaviraj, the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, is now going to give us the purport. The love of the Gopis is called Rudha Bhav. It is pure and spotless. It is not at any time material lust. The pure love of the Gopis has been celebrated by the name, quote unquote, lust. The dear devotees of the Lord, headed by Sri Uddhava, desire to taste that love. So Uddhava is very confidential servant of Krishna. It was he Krishna sent with the message for the Gopis after Krishna left and did not return for some time after the killing of Kamsa. He selected Uddhava. Krishnadas continues, lust and love have different characteristics, just as iron and gold have different natures. The desire to gratify one's own senses is known as kam, lust. But the desire to please the senses of Lord Krishna is called prema, love. So gold and iron are both metals, but you know better than me. What would you rather have, an ounce of gold or an ounce of iron? You know better than me. The object of lust is only the enjoyment of one's own senses. But love caters to the enjoyment of Lord Krishna, and thus it is very powerful. Social customs, scriptural injunctions, bodily demands, fruitive action, shyness, patience, bodily pleasures, self-gratification, and the path of Varnashram Dharma, which is all very difficult to give up. The Gopis have forsaken all of these, along with their families, and suffered their relatives' punishment and scolding. Why? All for the sake of serving Lord Krishna. They render loving service to Krishna for the sake of Krishna's enjoyment. So this is why it's not lust. The Gopis do everything to satisfy Krishna's senses. That is the very definition of bhakti. This is called firm attachment to Lord Krishna. It is spotlessly pure, like a clean cloth that has no stain. Therefore, lust and love are quite different. Lust is like dense darkness, but love is like the bright sun. There is not even the slightest taint of lust in the love of the Gopis. Their relationship with Krishna is only for the sake of Krishna's enjoyment. The Gopis do not care for their own pleasures or pains. All their physical and mental activities are directed to offering enjoyment to Lord Krishna. They renounced everything for Krishna. Thus, they have pure attachment to giving Krishna pleasure. So, Prabhupada elsewhere says that this subject matter is for most people very difficult to understand. But Prabhupada says, but there is a material example which will help you to understand. And Prabhupada said, by studying the love of the mother for the child. And you mothers, you now are going to understand exactly what I'm saying. This is the example Prabhupada gives. That the mother will deny herself. She'll do anything and everything to protect the child. That is mother's nature. She doesn't go to college to learn how to do that. It's in her nature. Anything the mother does, she'll sacrifice her own. Just like there's this prayer, Uttara. When Ashvatthama sent the Brahmastra to kill Parikshit in her womb, what was her prayer? She did not pray for her own protection. She said, save my embryo. She wasn't thinking of herself. That's mother. Her first concern was embryo, baby, child. And of course, because Uttara is pure devotee of Krishna, Krishna said both Uttara and Parikshit. Now, Krishnadas Kaviraj will explain how Bhagavad Gita verse 4:10, is it 4:12, whatever, 4:11, I think it's 4:11. Yeyatang mang parapad. Why that doesn't show up in the Gopees Bhagavad Gita. He's going to explain that. Lord Krishna has a promise from before to reciprocate with his devotees according to the way they worship him. That's that Bhagavad Gita. Yeyatang mang parapajante tangs tataiva bhajamyaham mamovatma anuvartante Manusya Partha Sarvasha. Every Indian knows that verse. Every Hindu knows that verse. But that promise has been broken by the worship of the Gopees, as Lord Krishna himself admits. So now we get the Sanskrit of the verse that ended the chapter. Naparaye hung niravadya sangyujang svasadu krityang vibudayusha pava yamabajang durjara geha shrinkala sangvrishchach tadva pratiyatu sadhuna. That's the actual Bhagavatam verse. O Gopis, I am not able to repay my debt for your spotless service, even within a lifetime of Brahma. Your connection with me is beyond reproach. You have worshipped me, cutting off all domestic ties, which are difficult to break. Therefore, please let your own glorious deeds be your compensation. Now Krishnadas Kaviraj is going to give the purport. So now, whatever affection we see the Gopis show for their own bodies, know it for certain to be only for the sake of Lord Krishna. The Gopis think like this: I have offered this body to Lord Krishna. He is its owner, and it brings Krishna enjoyment. Krishna finds joy in seeing and touching this body. So it is for this reason that the Gopis cleanse and decorate their bodies. And there is another wonderful feature of the emotion of the Gopis. Its power is beyond the comprehension of material intelligence. When the Gopis see Lord Krishna, they derive unbounded bliss, although they have no desire for such pleasure. The Gopis taste a pleasure 10 million times greater than the pleasure Lord Krishna derives from seeing them. That, my friends, is mind-boggling. So, you have heard me say sometimes over the years, actually, you can derive more pleasure not by trying to become God. You'll derive more pleasure by serving God. Look what it just said. The Gopis taste the pleasure 10 million times greater than Krishna's pleasure from seeing the Gopis. This makes materially no sense. The Gopis have no inclination for their own enjoyment, and yet their joy increases. This is indeed a contradiction. For this contradiction, I see only one solution. The joy of the Gopis lies in the joy of their beloved Lord Krishna. Again, Prabhupada's example. The mother enjoys when she sees the child is doing nicely. The mother is not so much concerned about her own, but when the mother sees that her child is doing nicely, then she becomes very happy. So that's why Prabhupada uses that to help us understand this very high concept. This, what's being explained here, this is like postgraduate study of spiritual philosophy. You are very fortunate to have joined the Zoom team today. When Lord Krishna sees the Gopis, his joy increases, and so his unparalleled sweetness increases also. The Gopis also think, Krishna has obtained so much pleasure by seeing me. So that thought increases the fullness and beauty of their faces and body. And the beauty of Lord Krishna increases at the sight of the beauty of the Gopis. And the more the Gopis see Lord Krishna's beauty, the more their own beauty increases. So it's constantly competing. Krishna sees the Gopis, oh, Krishna, they become more beautiful. And then Krishna, what? They become up. It doesn't end. Because it's not material. It's transcendental, ever increasing. Ananda. This is how to understand Ananda. This section here, this is Ananda. Their beauty and happiness is increasing by seeing each other. In this way, a competition takes place in which no one acknowledges defeat. Krishna, however, derives pleasure from the beauty and good qualities of the gopis. And when the gopis see Krishna's pleasure, the joy of the gopis increases. Therefore, we find that the joy of the gopis nourishes the joy of Lord Krishna. For that reason, the fault of lust is not present in their love. And then there is another natural symptom of the gopis' love that shows it to be without any trace of lust. The love of the gopis nourishes the sweetness of Lord Krishna. That sweetness in turn increases their love, for they are greatly satisfied. The happiness of the abode of love is in the happiness of the object of that love. This is not a relationship of desire for personal gratification. Whenever there is such unselfish love, that is its style. The reservoir of love derives pleasure when the lovable object is pleased. When the pleasure of love interferes with the service of Lord Krishna, the devotee becomes angry towards such ecstasy. Yes, there's one example. One of Krishna's servant, Dwaraka, his chariot driver, was one time fanning Krishna. And he got so absorbed in fanning Krishna, he fell from his post onto the ground. I guess he was on a platform. He became so ecstatic that he fell, and he was thinking, my ecstasy ruined my service to Krishna. That's how the devotee thinks. Furthermore, pure devotees never forsake the loving service of Lord Krishna to aspire for their own personal pleasure through the 5 kinds of liberation, which we will discuss a little bit when we study the translations to the Damodarashtakam prayer. Because repeatedly in that prayer, the devotee says, I don't want any mukti or moksha. I don't even want to go to Vaikuntha, which is the ultimate form of moksha. He said, all I want is this vision of you as Damodar, Balagopal. He doesn't want anything else. No other benediction. All he wants, I just always want this vision of you as Damodar. The natural love of the gopis is devoid of any trace of lust. It is faultless, bright, and pure like molten gold. So that concludes our study of the Rasa Leela. Next week, we will hear the Govardhan Leela, because next Sunday is the pastime, not tomorrow, but the following Sunday is the pastime of Govardhan. So I have to speak on Govardhan next week. So now, let us sing Damodar Ashtakam. And I'm going to specifically dedicate Damodar Ashtakam to the grandchild of the Rakti family. Namamishwaram Sachid Ananda Rupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam Yashoda Biyolukalan Davamanam Paramrishtam Atyantato Drutya Gopya Rudantang Muhur Netra Yugmam Rijantang Karamboja Yugmena satanka netram muhushvasa kampa trirekanka kanta Shitagraivam damodaram bhakti badham Itidrik swalilabir ananda kunde Swagosham nimajantam akyapayantam Tadiyeshitageshu bhaktairjitadvang Punak prematastang shatavritti vande Varang deva moksham na mokshavadhingva Na chanyang vrinehang vareshada piha Idang deva purnata gopala balang Sadame manas yavi rastam kimanyay Idang te mukam bhojam atyanta nilay Ritang kuntalay snigdha raktaish chagopya Muhushchumbitam bimba raktadarang me Manasya virastam alam laksha labhai Namo deva damodar ananta vishno Prasida prabodhuka chalabdi magnam Kripadrishti vrishyati dinam vatanu Viyanesha mamagyam edyakshi drishyaha Kuveratmajo bada murtyaiva yadvat Twayamochi tau bhakti ajau kritau cha Tatha prema bhakti swakang me prayachcha Namokshe grahomesti damodareha Namaste stu damne spuradipti damne Vadyodarayata vishvasya damne Namo radhikayai Vadya priyayai Namo nanta vilaya devaya tubhyam Namami shradam sachid ananda rupam Lasat kundalam gokule brajamanam Yashoda violukalat davamanam Paramrishtam atyantato drutya gopya Jaya Radha Damodar Radha Damodar Radhe 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 I bow down to the Supreme Controller, whose form is composed of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, Satchid Ananda, whose earrings play and swing, who is splendorously manifest in Gokul, but in fear of Mother Yashoda, He gets down from the wooden rice grinding mortar and runs away. However, the Gopi Sri Yashoda, quickly chasing after him, catches him from the back. If you want to understand this Damodarashtakam prayer, then you should study the 9th chapter of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam for our final Kartik program that I will do. So that's the week after the Govardhan program. We will hear the complete Damodar Leela pastime from Srimad Bhagavatam. Verse number 2. Crying again and again with very fearful eyes, and rubbing his 2 eyes with his 2 lotus hands again and again, quickly breathing, sighing, and trembling, making the pearl necklaces and other ornaments shake. His neck is marked with 3 lines just like a conch shell. I offer my humble obeisances unto Damodara, who has a rope around his belly, who is bound only by devotion. And that Sanskrit verse, Bhakti Badam, is key. It's one of the main themes of this Damodar Leela. There are many themes, but perhaps the most prominent theme is this Bhakti Badam. Because the pastime is that Yashoda brings all the rope she has in the house, but it's still 2 fingers too short to tie up Krishna to the grinding mortar. She could have gotten all the rope in the universe. It still would have been 2 fingers too short. And all the Gopees, the neighbors by that time, had come, and they were smiling and giggling. And Yashoda, after so many attempts, she also gave up out of frustration. And that's when Krishna said, okay, now I'm going to allow you to tie me up. Because Krishna is Ajita, unconquerable. He cannot be conquered. Only one thing can conquer him: bhakti. So that's the main theme of this Damodar Leela. Because Yashoda has so much bhakti, Krishna, there's a nice picture there, Madan put there. Very nice, Madan. Yes, because Yashoda has so much bhakti, then Krishna allowed himself to be tied up. Displaying childhood pastimes, such as this Damodar Leela, immersing his own family and the other residents of Gokula in a pool of bliss by such pastimes. To those desirous of knowing his majesty, Damodar makes known his quality of being conquered by his loving devotees who are devoid of such knowledge, because Yashoda does not know that Krishna is God. No. All Yashoda knows is that this is my baby. She is unaware of Krishna's majesty and potency. No, all she knows, this is my baby. So again, with love and devotion unto that Lord Damodar, hundreds and hundreds of times I praise him. Number 4, O Lord, I do not pray for the boon of moksha, either as in personal liberation or even the highest pinnacle of liberation, entering the realm of Sri Vaikuntha Loka. Nor do I want anything else from you. I know that you can bestow any boon, but may this divine bodily form of yours, Bala Gopal, as a young cowherd boy here in Vrindavan, be manifest always in my heart. What is the use of other things? This is what we mean by exclusive devotion. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Mam Ekam, me only. The author of this song, Satyavrata Muni, has that full surrender to Krishna. Doesn't want anything. All he wants is this vision of Balagopal Damodar in his heart. That's all he wants. Number 5, your lotus-like face, surrounded by curling locks of hair, which are very dark blue, soft and glossy, is tinted reddish. Your lotus-like face is also kissed again and again by the Gopi Sri Yashoda, who has lips which are red as the bimba fruit. So in my heart, may all this be manifest, because there is no need for me to request the attainment of millions of other boons which are simply useless. Verse number 6. Be pleased, Deva, O Divine Lord. Be pleased, Damodara, whose belly is bound with a rope. Be pleased, Ananta, O limitless Lord. Be pleased, Vishnu, O all-pervading Lord. Be pleased, Prabhu, my Master. I bow down to you. Alas, I am immersed in a network of miseries within this material ocean of repeated birth and death. So please accept me and rain down your merciful glance upon this very fallen and ignorant fool. Notice, he exemplifies Lord Chaitanya's third Shikshastakam prayer. Trinadapi sunichena tarariva sahishnuna amanina amanadena. He exemplifies utter humility. Sometimes my very good friend Krishna Kumar and I, when I come to see him every month at his office, we have nice discussions about bhakti. And Krishna Kumar points out to me repeatedly, Prabhuji, the only thing that really matters when I see a devotee is humble. And I'm glad he has learned this. Very glad that he has learned this. Because that's how you tell who is the real devotee, by their humility. O supremely independent Lord, please become perceptible to my eyes. Same thing we say during Ratha Yatra. Jagannatha Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu me. Jagannatha Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu me. Kindly be visible unto me. Number 7. The two sons of Kuvera, named Nalakuvara and Manigriva, were delivered by you, whose divine form was bound with ropes to the grinding mortar. And since they were cursed by Narada to take birth as Yamala Arjuna trees, they were liberated by you. And you also made them the recipients of devotional service. O Lord Damodara, please give me your own loving devotion, for I do not have any enthusiasm for liberation. Now it's interesting. This next pastime after the Damodar Leela is Krishna delivering the two sons of Kuvera who were cursed to stand at trees. In that narration, when Krishna is looking, he's tied up to the grinding mortar. And what is Krishna thinking? My mother thinks that she has tied me up and I cannot do any more nonsense. I'm going to do even more nonsense. So Krishna looks out into the courtyard and sees the Yamala Arjuna trees. And he says, oh, I know those two trees. My devotee Narada wants me to deliver the two sons of Kuvera who are in those trees. Now, what's interesting at that time, Krishna says, I have nothing to do with Nala Kuvera and Manigriva. I don't care about them. But because Narada wants me, then I'm going to do it. So it's the same concept. Krishna is in the hands of the devotee, and Krishna is Bhakta Vatsal. He pleases the desire of his devotees. Final verse. Obeisances to you, obeisances unto the rope around your waist, obeisances unto your splendorous effulgent abode, obeisances unto your splendorous belly, which is the shelter of the universe. Garbhodakashai Vishnu. That's the reference. Obeisances unto Sri Radhika. So this Satyavrata, he must be on a very high platform because he knows about Radhaji. For she is your beloved. Obeisances unto your limitless sportive pastimes. Obeisances unto your transcendental nature. Obeisances unto you. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.